Rev it up and welcome to Cars Yeah, show number 1671. Today we're talking about Nissan Z cars, those old Datsun Z cars, and everything Z. Stay buckled up.
This is Cars Yeah, where you'll enjoy interviews with inspiring automotive enthusiasts. Mark Green is here to provide you with a fuel injection of automotive inspiration. So get in, sit down, buckle up, and get ready for a wild ride here on Cars Yeah.
Hello, inspiring automotive enthusiasts, and welcome to Cars Yeah. Today I'm in Villa Park, California, not too far from Disneyland, actually, with a very special guest by the name of Pete Evanow. Pete, welcome to Cars Yeah. Are you buckled up and ready for a fun ride?
I am indeed.
All right, we'll have some fun here today. Now, before I give you a proper introduction, because we're going to be talking about a car that's near and dear to my heart, I want you to tell my listeners one little thing that most people may not know about you.
I lived most of my life overseas.
Really? Whereabouts? All over the place?
I lived in such lovely garden spots like Tehran, Iran.
Oh, wow.
I lived in parts of Germany. I lived in London. I lived in Peru and Argentina.
Now, were you in the service or were you doing something different?
My dad was in the CIA.
Oh, wow. A spook. Oh,
Yep.
okay. Wow.
Big time spook.
Very interesting. Well, that must have added a lot to the rounding of your character, because my wife lived in South America for 4 years. Her father was in the Marine Corps, and she said those were some of the best times of her life. She was in high school. She said it was just so much fun. It was different, unique. And even though in South America in the 70s, there was a lot of kind of goofy stuff going on, and they had to be kind of careful. They had bodyguards with them all the time and so forth. I would imagine that rounded you out. It gave you a whole new perspective on the world.
Well, it gave me a different perspective for sure. It gave me a more appreciation for people. I'm just grateful that we have more than what we need in many cases, because a lot of these countries were very impoverished. Iran in particular, even Peru was at the time I lived there. Like your wife, I lived in Peru in the mid-'70s, and I was going to high school then, and it was a time of turmoil there. We didn't have bodyguards so much, but they did have a curfew. You couldn't be out after 7 p.m. because there was a lot of things going on. So it was a difficult time, and then we moved from there to Argentina, and it was just it gave me a complete understanding of how relationships are important, and how you could say something that's not right and it could be misconstrued. So it helped shape my character in many ways as a human being, and also later on as a manager and dealing with people. You mentioned your experiences dealing with people, and so that really had an impact. And I also spoke Farsi, which is the native language of Iran, and of course I can speak Spanish. I spent many years down there. And then some German and French. So,
wow.
It was a good, and we saw all of Europe. My mother was a great tour guide. I mean, she loved all that, and we'd, take tours of every country. So I saw all of the Middle East, all of Europe, and all of South America. So, well,
I think it's an important thing for everybody to do, and especially in the United States. Yeah, we have such an abundance here. Both my kids did time when they were did time. That sounds bad. They didn't do time, but they got to spend some time in foreign countries during college with semesters away, and they both came back with a whole different outlook on people, things, appreciation for the things that they have here. And my son in particular spent some time raising money for World Bicycle Relief for people who lived in rural Zambia. And so to go there and see people that lived literally in huts with dirt floors, and their appreciation for something as simple as a bicycle that enabled them to get to school without being chased by lions or caught by the lions, or where their families could take milk to town to make money so they could eat, or bring water to their little hut so they could drink fresh water. He came back here with a whole different perspective, and mostly gratitude and appreciation for the things
Yeah,
that he
that's
had.
wonderful, though. If you can give back in that capacity, that's great.
Yeah.
And to understand that.
Yeah, really proud of what he did there. Well, let me give you a proper introduction. We're going to dive into what we're talking about today. Pete has worked in and around the automotive industry for some 30 years. He spent 4 years with Nissan Motorsports and its Z store. He authored the book Z, 35 Years of Nissan Sports Cars, and his newest book is titled Nissan, 50 Years of Exhilarating Performance, with a foreword by Hiroshi Tamura. Am I saying his name right?
Yes, you are.
There you go. This Nissan official chronicle of Z history covers from Datsun's planning of the new model in the late 1960s through the latest 50th anniversary 370Z. This wonderfully illustrated book also covers the car's success, its significance in racing history, including IMSA, SCCA sports racing, and it includes the likes of Paul Newman, of course, racing with Bob Sharp, and John Morton with Peter Brock at Brock Racing Enterprises. Pete and I are good friends, that other Peter that I know. And Pete is also a professor in advertising and public relations at California State University, Fullerton. Published by Motorbooks is where this book comes from, my good friends at Motorbooks. We'll be back in just a minute to talk with Pete. First, a word from our valued sponsors that make this show possible. So sit tight. We're talking Z's today. We're going to have some fun. We'll be right back. Did you know that Covercraft is much more than car covers? They offer protection for the inside of your vehicles as well. No matter what kind of vehicle you drive, Covercraft makes a floor mat, a cargo area protection product just for your vehicle. Their plush, custom-fit floor mats turn any ride into something special. Their premier Berber custom floor mats, which are a favorite of mine if you want something very stylish and unique for your favorite ride. They also have Weather Shield floor liners that provide ultimate protection for heavy dirt, mud, snow, and slush. Their Carhartt custom cargo liners not only look great, but keep your rear cargo area and seats protected from the kids, the pets, or whatever's going on back there. Do you have a pet that destroys your vehicles? Covercraft has you covered for that too, with a wide variety of pet protection options. Is your vehicle getting a little long in tooth? There's no better way to give it a new car look than with a custom fit floor and trunk mat. I replace mine every few years with something a little different just for fun. All your options are easy to clean, they secure to the floor, and they look oh so good. Don't forget your trunk too. Custom fit trunk liners for sedans, coupes, and SUVs are perfect to protect the factory carpet from all those things that can stain, tear, and damage your carpets. Check out Covercraft.com for the huge number of styles, colors, and options that you'll love. And I've got a deal for you here at Cars Yeah. If you use the YEAH120 code at Covercraft.com, you'll get 10% off your Covercraft order on me. Go to Covercraft.com, use the code YEAH120 at checkout and get 10% off today. Covercraft, they've got you covered. American Collectors Insurance. That's who now protects my Porsche Turbo, the one I call my Orange Crush. They've been protecting vehicles since 1976. With all the time, effort, and money you've put into your classic vehicles, do you know how much you would receive if yours was stolen, damaged, or totaled in an accident or a fire? Your regular auto insurance carriers won't tell you until after the claim, and more than likely, you'll be in for a rude awakening. With an agreed value policy from American Collectors Insurance, you'll be paid your vehicle's full agreed value. No surprises. So don't just hope for a fair claim settlement. Be certain and know exactly what you'll get with an agreed value policy. I shopped around and decided to protect my car with American Collectors Insurance. Give them a call today for a quote at 866-ACI-YEAH. That's 866-224-9324 and protect the ones you love. Tell them Mark Green at Cars Yeah sent you. That's American Collectors Insurance. Classic car insurance designed by collectors for collectors, folks just like you and me. All right, Pete, we are back. And before we dive into this book that you put together, I would love for you to share a success quote or a mantra, some kind of saying that's been instrumental in your life. I say it's a nice way to get the wheels spinning here on Cars Yeah, so grab the wheel, my friend.
Okay, I've got two quotes for you.
Great.
So the first one is, he who feared he would not succeed sat still. And the reason I use that is that if you don't pursue your goals or your passions or your interests, you're not going to live a full life. And I have always wanted to be a writer. And that started when I was a newspaper editor in high school, and just continued through college and throughout my career. And I've used writing as not only a tool, but as a passion in my career. And now I teach it. And I've been very fortunate to have worked with Motorbooks in creating these 2 books on behalf of Z owners, or to promote the Z. But it's really important to me to follow your passion. I've also started 2 businesses. One failed and one didn't, and one worked for many years. And so if you don't do anything, if you don't pursue those goals, you're going to be frustrated, my personal opinion. The second quote is, "He who has ears, let him understand how to listen." And that applies not only to you, Mark, but to anybody who's kind of in the business. And I started my career as a reporter, and I learned how to listen to people very quickly, because, you took their words and their story and you turned it into a story that other people wanted to know about. And that has carried me through life as well, in being a good listener. And it's also made me a good manager of people, listening to them and helping them carve their careers. And now as a professor, it's also, you have to be a good listener to my students. And, I chose that quote partly to honor you because of what you're doing with your career and what you have done in following not only your passion, but being a good listener of all the 1,600 plus interviews that you have had. So I think that's a good quote.
Well, thank you for that. That's very kind of you to say that. For me, this is fun. I get to hear all sorts of great stories. I always tell people what I do is like Forrest Gump's box of chocolates. I never know what I'm going to get, but it's always pretty tasty and it's always pretty enjoyable. And you're right. It's amazing what you can learn when you simply close your mouth and listen. Keep your eyes open, your ears open. That old saying about crossing the street so you don't get hit by a car that our parents taught us about first. How'd that go? Let's see. First, look and listen before you cross the street. Use your eyes, use your ears before you use your feet. There, I got it.
There you go.
That was the one. And I like your first one as well. It reminds me of a quote. A friend of mine, when I lived in Southern California, I surfed. I grew up surfing, and I kind of stopped for a while. And my wife and I bought our first home, and the next door neighbors turned out to be the high school prom queen from my high school. And her husband was a very physically active guy. He was a doctor, a young doctor, and he played rugby, but he loved to surf. So he got me back into surfing. And there was one day we were out at a break in San Diego that's actually La Jolla, where I grew up. That's kind of a big, and it was kind of a big day. It was a little intimidating, called Black's Beach. And the waves can get very big there. And I was we were paddling out. I'm going, oh man, this is a big day at Black's. And if anyone knows about surfing at Black's, you got to be a little careful out there because it can, in a big day, it can wallop you. And I turned to take off on a wave that was particularly large, and I backed off. And I turned around, and he was there, and I said, I should have taken that. And he looked at me, and I'll never forget it. I'm still sharing it today. This was 20 years ago. He said, shoulda, coulda, woulda. Words of a loser, and he splashed me in the face with water. And the rest of the day, I'm proud to say I took off on every wave. I got walloped pretty good, but you're right. You can't sit back. You got to get out there and do things. I commend you for what you're doing, and I want to talk about this book because I've got a copy of it here sitting in front of me. It's very cool. It's got the old original Z, the orange car. So tell me, what is it about Nissan and the Z that inspired you to write these 2 books, but in particular, the newest one? And tell us a little bit about this journey you took on going back and walking people through the history of the car. Because I sat down last night and enjoyed going through the pages, and I went, whoa, there's some stuff here I didn't know.
I love history. And so that was the first incentive more than anything. But, my time at Nissan was very eventful and very enjoyable. The Z store, which is the company or the division or the operation that basically managed the restoration of the Zs, was put in place immediately after Nissan announced the end of production, at least here or the end of importation of the 300ZX. And they wanted to keep the Z name alive for various reasons. The 2 most prominent reasons were that they always knew that another Z would come at some point, but Nissan was at that time financially
Struggling a bit.
Struggling, yeah, that's a great word. Financially struggling. So they were under the gun to cut as many costs, and the Z was not selling as well at that time. So they cut it, but they wanted to build a bridge to the next car whenever that would occur. The second thing was they also wanted to protect the Z trademark. There are several other manufacturers who use the Z name in a car, and one particular company manufacturer was trying to get the Z trademark away from Nissan, saying that Nissan no longer had a car for sale in the United States. So this was a way, the Z store was a way to keep the Z name alive, and it also justified the fact that Nissan says we're still building Z cars here in the United States, and that was through this restoration program. And I was tapped to lead it and was very honored to do so. And I was very familiar with restoring cars, not Zs necessarily, but other cars. And so I ran the program. It was very ambitious to begin with. I mean, the goal was to build something like 30 cars a month. And you just can't do that. You can't restore these cars that quickly. Every one of them had to be done by hand. We had, at one time, probably 18 cars in body shops all around Southern California. And, it was just difficult to maintain. We only had a skeleton crew on this. And so the body shops, many of them work at their own pace, so to speak. So I'm kind of whipping everybody into a frenzy to try to get these cars out of the body shop, out of the, they all sat on oh my gosh, I forgot the
rotisseries?
word. Rotisseries, thank you.
There you go.
And so we'd ship the rotisseries on flatbeds from place to place. And we had Pierre Z, we had Dotson Alley, we had, a couple of Les Kennedy, a couple of people restoring these cars, but it was just, and it was not like an assembly line. So long story short, we ended up with about 37 cars before Nissan pulled the plug. And it was just purely a financial reason. The cars originally were set to be sold to dealers at $25,000. And I'll be honest with you, Mark, we lost probably $35,000 on each car.
I was going to say it had to be twice or three times that cost. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and that's using parts that we pulled, new old stock we pulled out of the warehouse. So I eventually got it up to about $35,000 before the dealers were just screaming at me for raising it 10 grand. But we still lost money in every car. But what we gained from that was we had a lot of publicity. Road and Track featured us. Car and Driver, everybody, all the buff books. And so that was great from that standpoint that we got all that publicity. And I was very proud of our accomplishments. And now, if you look at these cars, if you watch Bring a Trailer or any of these sites, these things are fetching six figures.
Yes.
And I'm very proud of that the fact that Zs are finally getting the kind of, and this is trickling down to not only what they call vintage Zs, the ones that we restored, but any Z that's got a really clean history and is very original. I mean, these cars are selling for $110, $120, $130. There was one that sold last year for $310,000.
Yeah.
I mean, holy cow.
Oh, yeah.
So, that's very gratifying. So, and again, to get back to your original question, I felt that, that's a great story to tell. And then all the people who have contributed to the Z and its reputation. I mean, you mentioned Newman, and you mentioned Bob Sharp, and certainly Peter Brock. And there are just so many people who have been a part of it. I worked for Steve Millen in the mid-'90s, and Steve certainly has plays a big role in that. And then I worked for Frank Honsowitz in Nissan Motorsports, and Frank, of course, ran and his predecessor, Cass Kastner, in Nissan Motorsports. I mean, they really contributed greatly to Nissan's reputation and the wins that the Z earned, and then their IMSA program. So it was branded a Z, of course, the GTP Z.
Yeah.
So everywhere we look, the Z has played an important role in terms of Nissan's reputation, its heritage, its legacy. So it's an important car, and I knew that in interviewing some of the Japanese folks in preparation for the new book, the Z book, that we were assured that there was going to be a new Z.
Yeah.
Even, they started working on it 3-4 years ago. And it finally got the green light, and everybody's excited about it. I think the new car is going to be a real not only eye-catching in terms of appeal, but I think it's going to be a great performance car.
You know, I just got my latest copy, and it's not sitting in front of me here, but I think this Road and Track has a picture of the new Z coming out. It's very retro-esque.
Yes.
In its look and feel. So I'll be very excited to see that. And of course, for kids like you and me who remember those back in the 70s when they came out, and then the later cars, of course, I mean, it's just one of those legacy type cars. And now you see these millennials and XYs coming into being at a point in their life where they can actually buy some toy cars or have some fun coming back. And of course, I believe Randy Nonnenberg bring a trailer. I think he has his own lime green Z car that sits right in his offices.
He does.
Yeah.
It sits right in his office. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's great to see them come back. I'll make sure I put a link in Pete's show notes page so that you can find and get your hands on a copy of this. Good friends at Motorbooks, of course, published this book. They do great work. They brought me so many great people. I always ask my guests about a big challenge or a big failure they've faced. Now, this could be in the writing of the book, the research, or it could be a personal story. Doesn't matter so much, but as you walk us through this, what we really want to learn here, Pete, is what was the lesson learned so that you could come out positive on the other side. So take us on a little Z trip here.
Okay, it's not necessarily Z, but it's one where I followed my passion. So I had, early in my career, I started out in publishing out of grad school, and I worked for a weekly trade magazine, and I really did well, and I moved my way up the corporate ladder, so to speak, and 5 years in, I was actually the publisher of the magazine. And I was very proud of that achievement. And I, lived in New York at the time, or had lived in New York, and I had just moved to Denver because that was the corporate headquarters. Well, unbeknownst to me, there were 5 other publishers as well of other magazines that this communications company owned. Unbeknownst to us, the president sold the company. He sold it for big money.
Yeah.
And so all 6 of us who were publishers, senior staff, as well as the senior staff, were broomed out. I mean, in one day. So we were all, victims of a corporate takeover. I was young. I was 28. It was kind of, wow. All of a sudden it hit me like a rock, and I'd never experienced anything like this. I thought I was going to spend my career there.
Yeah.
And boom, I'm out. So what I learned from that was that you pick yourself up, you dust yourself off, and you go on down the road. What I did do is, rather than stay in publishing, I said, you know what, Pete, I'm going to follow my passion. My passion was racing and motorsports, not necessarily as a driver, because my talent, and I'd already been to a driving school, my talent ran out at turn 2. So instead, I decided I wanted to get on the event or publishing or production side. Well, fate had it that the Sports Car Club of America was based right there in Denver, in Inglewood.
Yeah.
And so I went over there and interviewed for a marketing manager's position. And I had never been in motorsports, but I'd been in sales. I'd been in marketing to some extent. And so they hired me. I actually interviewed with Nick Craw, who was the president at the time. He and I hit it off. We had similar backgrounds. I'm not wealthy like Nick. I mean, Nick came from money. But the thing with Nick was the head of the Peace Corps. And so, we hit it off because I'd lived overseas. He'd been, spent a lot of his time through his role as the head of the Peace Corps overseas. So we just kind of connected really well right there. And he hired me. And boy, I was just so proud to be a part of SCCA. And I was part of the pro racing department for 2 years. And in those 2 years, I ran the Trans Am and the Escort Endurance series, and then the race truck series that was sponsored by Coors, the little mini race trucks.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And that was great. And what it did is that it built up immediately a huge network of people. And motorsports is a very small community. We all all we do is we change the logos on our jackets, but to work for another team or for another group.
Yeah.
But we all stay within the sport, most of us, for many, many, many years.
Yeah.
It was a great move, and I've always still been appreciative of Nick to take a risk on me and hiring me. But I really did pick myself up, dust myself off, and move on down the road. But I took a pay cut to come to SCCA, but I was following my passion, and so I was just so grateful to do that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. One door closed, another one opened. And always follow where your passion goes, where your love goes, because you'll always be successful there. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, Pete, I want to ask you a little bit more about your personal passion for cars, how you got into it, maybe some cars in your life. So keep the seatbelts on, and we'll be right back. My favorite collector car magazine is Keith Martin's Sports Car Market. I've been a subscriber for decades. Sports Car Market is the Wall Street Journal for enthusiasts and collectors. It's your monthly must-read, whether you dream of owning a collector car, maybe you have two, or maybe you've got 200. Sports Car Market has been around for 31 years, and it's filled with valuable articles, intelligent write-ups, and the latest auction sales. Go to sportscarmarket.com and subscribe today. Here's a couple deals I have for you just for listening here on Cars Yeah. If you use the checkout code Cars Yeah, you'll receive a 50% discount on your digital subscription at Sports Car Market. That's an exclusive offer from Cars Yeah. And guess what? Here's another deal. If you'd like to get the actual magazine, use the code BSH for buy, sell, hold. That's code BSH, and you'll get $10 off your annual print subscription. That's right, $10 off. Both of these are exclusive offers here at Cars Yeah for Sports Car Market Magazine. Just go to sportscarmarket.com and get your deals today. So what do you do after running a race team for 27 years with over 100 podiums, multiple Daytona wins, and a win at Le Mans? Well, if you're a racer and the Racers Group team owner Kevin Buckler, you found Adobe Road Winery. Located in Petaluma, California, he and his team have created a winning combination with the Racing Series, 4 ultra-premium red wine blends that are in a class of their own. Like racing, these wines comprise of art, precision, engineering, science, all wrapped in a whole lot of fun. You can choose from 4 blends titled Redline, Apex, Shift, and the 24. Today I'm going to talk about the 24. This wine earned 91 plus points from Robert Parker's Wine Advocate. It's a dark, spicy, and velvety blend with ripe blue and black fruits and very smooth tannins. The label features a 3-dimensional full metal chronograph in a bright gold finish that pays homage to the Daytona Rolex winners receive at Le Mans. The Racing Series is a fantastic gift for the ultimate enthusiast in your life. And I've got a deal for you today. If you use the code CARS, yeah, all one word, all in caps, when you're at the AdobeRoadWinery.com checkout, you get $10 off any purchase of wines from the Racing Series. Your wine ships promptly and arrives quickly right at your door. Use the code CARSYEAH at checkout to get $10 off your purchase of the Racing Series today. There's always a seat at the table for excellence with the Racing Series. Go to Adobe Road Wines today and use the code CARSYEAH at checkout. Cheers! All right, Pete, we're back, and I'd love for you to share a story that instigated this passion that you have for cars, that pivotal moment in your life when you knew you were going to be a car guy.
It goes back, way back. Now we're trickling down 60 plus years to when I was about, 2. And my uncle, my mother's brother, Uncle Bill, who was a passionate car freak himself, he worked for the Bureau of Public Roads. And so he was an engineer. He built bridges all around America. He loved cars, and he loved Matchbox cars. And he had 2 daughters, so he didn't have a son to really share that. And so he gave me my first Matchbox cars and really introduced me to the whole idea of, wow, these are wonderful things. And I always hold him up as the person responsible for introducing me to cars. My father, bless his heart, he wasn't really into cars, all that. He drove, are you ready for this? He drove what we used to call Renaults, the old Renault, the rear-ended one,
Wasn't it with the Dolphine?
Dolphine, sorry, yeah.
Well, you know why I know about the Renault Dolphine?
Tell me.
I raced a 1960 Lotus Formula Junior 18, and the gearbox in that car was out of a Renault Dolphine. That's why I know. And my parents had a Renault Dolphine when I was a little kid for a very short time. It gave them nothing but trouble, and they got rid of it pretty quick. But it was kind of like a weird French Volkswagen Bug, right?
Yeah. And he had 2 of them.
2.
I mean, he had 2 of them. I mean, he came home one night and he says, I sold the Renault, and we called them Renaults back then because we weren't French.
Yeah.
But he called. Well, we hadn't been to France yet. But my mom. I remember going, "Oh, thank goodness you sold it." She said, "What'd you get instead?" And he goes, "Another one." And I remember that we lived on a hill, and he parked the car so that when he started it, it would roll downhill, so he could dump the clutch to get it started.
You could bump start it. Yeah. Well, that's
so But so he didn't know much of it, but he did he loved rear engine cars because he bought a Corvair after that. So I mean, the man just had a certain fixation. But my uncle really introduced me to motorsports or to cars, and then it just kind of moved on from there. And then living overseas, there wasn't a whole lot to, you couldn't watch races or anything. So I subscribed to all the car magazines. It's, starting from age 10, probably, I got subscriptions to all the big four, and certainly that started everything from there. And it's been a long,
fun
road
journey.
Since.
Yeah, absolutely. What was the first really special car that you actually owned?
The first one that I owned that was special to me was a Porsche 944.
Oh, cool.
And it had just come out. The 924 was okay, but the 944 with the flared fenders, and it just was a beautiful car. It was 1983. I had just gotten this promotion to publisher. I got a nice bonus, and I went down to the Porsche dealer and bought it brand new, $25,000.
Wow.
$25,000. It was a lot of money in 1983.
Oh, yeah.
And I blew it all on a 944. Loved that car. I had an alarm, a nice 5-speed, beautiful car, basket weaves, and I kept that car for a couple of years. And then when I made the move to California, I drove it to California, and I got an offer from a guy who wanted it right then and there, and I sold it.
Well, then there it went. Well, the 944 was such a unique car when they came out. That 924, of course, was a bit anemic, but it was kind of filled a niche there for Porsche. But the 944 definitely came up, and those have really come back as collectible cars these days. And they were super successful in the racing series where they ran those cars for years. Yeah. I mean, way more successful than most people remember.
They ran them. They ran turbos in the Trans Am series.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they were great. Yeah. They're very successful. Well, I'm going to get into your head a little bit here, Pete. If you woke up tomorrow and you were a vehicle, manifest as a vehicle, not really so much what you want to be, but how you perceive your personality as a vehicle, what would you be?
I would be one of three. So, I'm a multi-personality kind of guy. But the first one would be a Series 1 Jag.
Oh,
and the reason why is that it's sophisticated, which I kind of consider myself, but also unpredictable.
Okay, yeah.
It'll stop and start at any day, at any moment. So I'm kind of like that too. There's days like that. The other one would be a 57 Chevy, because I kind of consider myself, having been born that year, as an enduring classic. So that one. And the last one would be a 240Z. Predictable, durable, and rising in value.
Okay, I like it. Those are some great answers to that question. Awesome. All right, well, we're going to enter the last lap. I'm going to ask you some questions, get some quick blips of that Z throttle or that Chevy throttle or the Jag throttle, whichever car is running that day. We'll kind of say I'd say maybe the Z or the Chevy over the Jag. I love Jaguars, but we know how they can be a little bit fickle. What's one of your personal habits, Pete, that you think has contributed to your successes in life over the years?
Perseverance.
Yeah, definitely. That helps a lot. Now, if I could arrange for you to have a drink or a meal with anyone in the automotive industry, living or deceased, who would that person be and why?
Okay, so I have two. One would be Mark Donohue. Just really love that man. Yeah. I had the pleasure of meeting his son, David.
Oh, wow.
And that was certainly an honor and a pleasure. But I always followed Mark Donohue's career, and just was ecstatic when he won the Indy 500 and devastated when he passed away, in 73. So I would love to sit down with him and talk to him. The other people that I would like to have dinner with or a drink with would be Ford's whiz kids. We're talking about Bob McNamara. We're talking about Tex Thornton, R.J. Miller, Edward Lundy. All these guys went on to have incredible careers. Some of them remained at Ford. And then, of course, McNamara went on to work for both Kennedy and LBJ as Secretary of Defense. But just a incredible bunch of guys who all came out of World War II together. They were all Army officers, and they all came en masse. 10 men en masse came over and were hired by Henry II to work for him at Ford. That must have been a group of people.
That must have been an incredible lunchroom there at Ford with those guys sitting there talking. Oh, my gosh. How about when it comes to automotive advice someone else has ever offered you? What's the best thing you've heard?
You know, I worked for Steve Saleen for a while.
Oh, wow.
And, you know, Steve's got a lot of negativity surrounding him. But one of the things I did learn is that he was an incredible marketer. He really knew how to market things. We used to call him the Roger Penske of showroom stock. But his focus was always on marketing, always on image. Image is everything, but it was always on precision and perception. I'll give you a great story. We were at Portland, and I got there early, and I was working for him, and we set up the big tractor trailers, and they were kind of together, but we were parked a little bit on a hill, and so it was a little, we couldn't get them right together. And Steve came and saw me and said, "You need to move those trailers." And we said, "Why?" And he said, "Because they don't look right together. The awnings don't come out precisely." And long story short, we moved them and put them in other locations so that everything looked precise. And he taught me a valuable lesson, which was, you know, it's about image. You know, you come in there and the trailers don't look exactly 100% or 110%. And it's perception. So, you know, that's why all the rigs, you go to a racetrack, every rig is shined, every rig looks beautiful. It's all about the show. Yeah. And so, I mean, and what you put on for customers. And I learned a very valuable lesson. It's about what we do, what we offer our customers.
You know, it reminds me of the lesson that McDonald's, Ray Kroc taught. He said, above and beyond everything, our bathrooms have to be impeccably clean all the time. Because when you walk into a bathroom in a restaurant, if it's not clean, you start to wonder if the kitchen's not clean, is my plate not clean, is the food not clean? I don't want to be here eating. So that was one of the key things. And I think McDonald's were the first ones to start those checkoff things, and they had them in the bathrooms. How every half hour their bathrooms were checked and cleaned so that people, and you know, to this day, when people go on road trips, McDonald's is where they stop to use the bathroom, and while they're there, they might just buy some food. So
yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yeah,
it's that trust level that's really important.
Yeah,
it's appearance, it's perception. You know.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, how about resources? There's so many great resources for us these days. Is there one in particular that's a go-to for you you'd like to share?
Well, you mentioned him earlier, and one of the best resources to me is Peter Brock.
Yeah, great guy. Peter
Brock is an icon. It has been a personal honor for me to get to know him a little bit better during the writing of this book. Mm-hmm. He's been very gracious to me. He's posted pictures of him with the book on his website, and I really appreciate that. But, you know, he's just done so much, not only for Nissan, but for the automotive industry. And look at his AeroVault trailers. I mean, he's just... what an incredible genius he is. And I think he's an inspiration for many people because at his age, he's still out there signing autographs, meeting people, has no hesitation to do that, doing well. I hope he lives for another 100 years because he's just such a great symbol of our industry.
He really is.
I take him as one. And then the other one we talked about, Randy Nonnenberg. I mean, look at what he's done with Bring a Trailer. And what a great tool that is. And I think a lot of people look at that every day. I've sold a couple cars on there. And so it's become a nice community for people.
I've had Randy on the show a few times. I always tell him, you've eaten up a lot of my life, buddy, looking at cars I didn't even know I wanted to buy.
No kidding.
Yeah, and kudos to him for selling that brand to Hearst. I sure hope they don't blow it and mess it up. We'll keep our fingers crossed. And of course, Peter's become a good personal friend. I've known him for a long time. He used to live up here in the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah, right. I remember that.
He and Gail, and he's been a guest on the show here many times. And it's interesting. People should go back if they missed my talks with Peter. Listen to him because he's been involved in some very unique things, including hang gliding business.
Right.
Where he set world records with his hang gliding design. So yeah, talk about genius. Definitely, he's one of those guys that we hope we have around for a long time.
I mean, he started that sport.
Yeah.
in the 70s.
Oh, I know.
So he's
Yeah.
really a prominent force in that industry. Yes.
And
I
it's
agree.
so interesting. I used to talk about surfing at Black's Beach. I used to sit out there in the waves and watch the hang gliders along the cliffs at Black's in San Diego, sailing back and forth, back and forth. It's something I never really did, but I'd go up there and watch them do that from time to time and think, man, that must be pretty cool. And little did I know, I was probably watching many of Pete's designs back then when I was a kid. Well, I always ask my guests to share a book. And of course, the book that you've written here, actually both books I'm going to put listed on Pete's show notes page. The current one, Nissan 50 Years of Exhilarating Performance. You need to have both of these in your automotive library. I do. They're awesome books. You're going to be really happy with that. And I'll put links to how you can buy them. Is there another book that maybe is written by someone else you might want to share today?
I would say anything by Peter Egan.
Yeah.
I miss him. I miss reading his columns in Road and Track. I mean, wonderful writer. Matt Stone is another favorite of mine.
Yep.
I just love all of his works. I'm a big Steve McQueen fan, and he's certainly become the historian for the McQueen estate or the whole family, and has done a great job there. So both of those are great reads. They're just, and Matt was with, I believe he's still with Motor Trend, and he's, written, just thousands of stories over. I was reading him before I really got involved in motorsports. So those two gentlemen are favorites of mine.
Matt's been a guest on the show here. Peter, I think my first book I bought of his was Leanings,
Yep.
I think it was called. Yeah.
Leanings, yeah. I heard that.
And I was just night before last, looking at a new book about Steve McQueen by Matt Stone. So both great books. I'll make sure I put those listed on Peter's show notes page. All right, Pete, we're up to the checkered flag. And this last question can be a bit of a doozy. I'm going to buy you a collector car today. Something fun, but there's some rules to this game that might make your answer alter a little bit. One is you can't sell it to buy a bunch of other cars with. That little trick's off the table. So whatever you pick needs to tick a lot of boxes, and you got to keep it. But here's the kicker. It's the only one collector car you can have in your garage, so you need to choose very wisely. So what am I buying you today, Pete?
You're buying me a Ferrari Dino.
Oh, okay. Well, I'd be happy to do that. One of my favorite Ferraris, even though Enzo didn't like calling it a Ferrari, he called it a Dino. But so aside from the beauty, in fact, that's the first Ferrari I'll say I ever drove was a Dino. Back when I was a kid and I was detailing cars, a client of mine had one, and he was nice enough to let me drive that car back from his house down. I think he was living down actually in Bird Rock in La Jolla. And then I would ride my bike down there and then drive that back to my house the long way. I always went over Soledad Mountain and down Hillside Drive and back around. What is it about the Dino you love so much?
I just love that curved window in the back. That's probably irreplaceable. I mean, boy, you don't want to get that punched out because that's going to be hard to find. But I just love the way it looks. I love the headlights, just the compactness of the car. I realized that it never really had the Ferrari name to it, and I'm kicking myself because the car was at one time maybe $60,000 or less, and now it's triple or quadruple. No, it's probably
even more than
times that.
Yeah, 6 times that. Yeah,
and so it is what it is. It's just a classic car. I just love that era of design and just a nice car.
They're so beautiful, and driving them, those big fenders bulging out in front of you. I mean, I just remember as a kid, it was like driving a go-kart almost. And, that engine wasn't super powerful, 2.4, but it had enough oomph for that little car. Very simple cars, pretty basic cars, not really built that well, but oh my gosh, they're sexy. They look good. Now, they came in a lot of really, really unique colors. In fact, many of those colors remind me a lot of the Z colors that came out. So that I get you the right car here today, Pete, what color would you like that Dino to be?
Boy, either yellow or maybe the blue.
Oh, yeah, 2 great colors. Well, they came in that beautiful yellow, fly yellow, the Porsche. And they had a signal yellow, the Ferrari did, that was so magnificent. So I'll see what I can do about that. Yeah, some of the colors that those cars came in were just stunning and very cool for the period.
And if you're being really generous today, you could throw in a Porsche 917.
Oh, I could. Oh, wow. Okay. Well, if I buy you 2 cars, 2 cars, Pete. I got to go back and buy a lot of cars for a lot of people.
Okay, so I'll stick with the Dino.
Yeah, I think you'd look pretty good in that thing. I think that'd be pretty fun. Well, Pete, you've taken me on a fun ride today. This has been great to get to know you better. I want to thank you for sharing your story. A big shout out to Steve Roth at Motor Books. He sent me so many great authors of their books. So thank you, Steve, for connecting me with Pete today. Now, before I let you go, could you offer our listeners one little parting piece of wisdom or guidance from the professor's mouth before you rip off down the coast highway in that Ferrari Dino?
Expand your network. Do as much as you can to build that up. Don't burn a bridge. Keep your head high. Don't procrastinate. Do what you want to do. Make sure you get it done. Mark, I'm so glad to have met you, and now I hope that you and I can continue to network and speak at times. And I really appreciate your time today and for featuring me and featuring my book. I'm very appreciative. It's really important that everybody helps each other. And so thank you for this. It's I'm living the dream. So this is I'm doing exactly what I want to do. I love teaching and I love writing. So this is really important to me.
You figured out the secret sauce to life, just like my past 1,670 other inspiring automotive enthusiasts here at Cars Yeah, where you can find all their shows archived here, of course, or on your favorite mobile podcast app. Now, if people want to keep up with you, Pete, what's the best way for them to do that?
Oh, boy.
Are you active on social media? Are you out there very much, or are you kind of a private guy?
Yeah, I probably should be more active on social media. I don't really have an Instagram page, but you know what? You have inspired me to probably create one. So,
okay, there you go.
I'll put that together. Every author should have a foundation, so to speak, and so it's probably time for me to do that. And I'm going to give you credit for that, and I'm going to start it up today.
All right. Well, good. Well, he'll let me know that, listeners. I'll make sure I put a link to that so you can all go there and follow him so we can have some instant gratification from people that are paying attention to him on Instagram, which is always fun. We all like to have some people pay attention to us. You can find everything on Pete's show notes page on the Cars Yeah website. Just go there, type in Pete, last name Evanow, and you'll find him there on the Cars Yeah website. Hey, Pete, thanks for being so generous today with your time and your expertise and your enthusiasm. Love your new book and your old book. Until you and I talk again, my friend, I'll see you down the road.
Take care. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's take a pit stop from the conversation and talk about my charity of choice here at Cars Yeah, America's Automotive Trust. America's Automotive Trust is a group of like-minded nonprofits working together to preserve and promote car culture across the country. Together, they provide scholarships and grants to aspiring technicians and restoration artists. They provide youth education programs and bring communities together through auto-related events, car shows, and drives. One of those nonprofits is very near and dear to my heart because it's right down the road from the Cars Yeah headquarters. It's the LeMay America's Car Museum in Tacoma, Washington. One of the world's truly great automobile collections and one of those must-see bucket list destinations for car people like you and me. If you haven't seen it, I hope you make a trip soon. And if you have seen it, it's probably time to visit again. To learn more about this fantastic museum, go to www.americascarmuseum.org. And while you're there, you can donate to help them keep their engines running. That's www.americascarmuseum.org. If you're listening to Cars Yeah, you've probably spent some time working on your favorite ride. But how confident are you working on your finances? You may be able to rebuild a fuel injection system, but can you decipher the details of a mutual fund? If you're like me, investments, insurance, annuities, budgeting, and other financial concepts may seem a bit daunting, but what if I told you there's a book that describes these subjects and more in an easy-to-read and a very humorous way? My friend Chris Kimball, CFP, a longtime sponsor and past guest here on Cars Yeah, has written that book, and it's titled The Saga of Ike and Penny, a couple's humorous journey through the confusing world of finance. It's a fun look at things you need to know, everything from investing to effective ways to get rid of credit card debt, and it's probably the only book on finance with a VMAX on the front cover and a classic Mini Cooper on the back. The book's available at Amazon for just $10, and this book will dramatically improve the direction of your financial future. I gave copies to each of my children. All securities are through Money Concepts Capital Corp. Christopher Kimball Financial Services is not affiliated with Money Concepts Capital Corp. Get your copy, The Saga of Ike and Penny, today.
Thank you so much for joining us on today's ride here at Cars Yeah. Drive on over to carsyeah.com to find show notes and inspiring automotive fun. Download your free copy of Filler Up, a fun book filled with gorgeous photographs of fuel filler fun, including quotes from more inspiring automotive enthusiasts. Download your copy today, and we'll see you next time on Cars Yeah.